Good afternoon. Let's do some business. We're doing it live right here, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business with the news driven hour right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KABC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money live on the air, 790 KABC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com, and your on demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Stock finishing mostly lower today with the S&P 500 barely eking out a closing gain. The consumer price index for the month of October came in a bit cooler than some analysts had expected. The Dow came in for a closing gain of 47 points, settling at 43,958. The S&P 500 finished up by just about a point at 5,985, and the Nasdaq ended lower by about 51 points at 19,231. The Russell 2K small cap closed lower by about 22 points today at 2,369. The yield on the 10-year note did move a bit today. The yield on the 10-year note finished at 4.45%, and the 30-year rate ended at 4.63%. Those are the highest closing levels since July 1st. The price of oil did end higher today for the second session in a row, with traders looking at prospects for energy demand, U.S. production, and oil and gas drillers under incoming President-elect Donald Trump. Crypto is taking the spotlight again, with Bitcoin hitting record highs. Bitcoin rallying above 93,000 today as the world's largest cryptocurrency continues to hit record highs following the November 5th presidential election. President-elect Donald Trump pro-crypto during his campaign and expected to offer a friendly regulatory regime for digital assets that should provide a tailwind for Bitcoin ETFs and related stocks such as Coinbase Global and Robinhood Markets, according to Investors Business Daily. In fact, joining us live right now is Matt KRANTZ, personal finance and managing editor for Investors Business Daily, watcher of financial markets, author of Investing Online and Fundamental Analysis for Dummies. Matt KRANTZ, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Wonderful to have you with us here, Matt, and a lot to talk about here following President Trump's election. And crypto has rallied. The stock market has rallied, taking a breather over the past couple of days here. But let's talk about crypto here, first of all, with Bitcoin popping above 93K, right now hovering just above 90,000 here. Give us your reaction to this tremendous rally we've seen here.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. ProShares Bitcoin ETF, which is the one I follow, is up 30% just from the election. That's like a week ago. It's just an amazing run. It's kind of interesting because at the same time, gold has actually sold off a little bit. It's down about 6% in that time. So it does seem like people are kind of looking to Bitcoin as a little bit more of a gold replacement, which has been a long promise of cryptocurrency.
So you got the traditional gold, analog gold, as we call it here, as well as the so-called digital gold, crypto, which has certainly been on a tear here. What about what's happening with Bitcoin hitting record highs here since the election, and all sorts of wild predictions, which seemed wild, of course. Now looks like 100,000 is within sight. What are your market monitors saying about where Bitcoin goes from here?
It's funny. It's hard to find out what the market monitors are saying because everything that gets sent to me that has the word Bitcoin in it goes to my spam folder. So to find out what's going on with Bitcoin, I have to mind my spam basket in my email. I think this just kind of tells you how controversial the whole thing is. People just love to hate or love to love it. It definitely doesn't seem to have any kind of a momentum or a lack of momentum. It just keeps going up, 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 up. People think the new administration is going to be really friendly to Bitcoin. A lot of people that are involved in Bitcoin are kind of involved in the Trump administration. So it does, I have to say, it does look pretty bright for the cryptocurrency right now, and we'll have to see if it continues.
On the air live with Matt KRANTZ from Investors Business Daily, and certainly on this program, we talk to the biggest fans of crypto as well as the harshest critics. Lately, of course, we've seen a lot more fans with the price of Bitcoin rallying above 93,000 today, and an interesting write-up in the latest Investors Business Daily, noting that the rise in Bitcoin should provide a tailwind for Bitcoin ETFs and related stocks such as Coinbase and Robinhood. And you mentioned one of the ETFs. Looks like BITO, B-I-T-O, one of the Bitcoin ETFs, actually throws out a rather impressive dividend. Have you had a chance to take a look at that one?
I did not know that Bitso had a dividend. I'm going to look at that. I didn't know. I thought that was one of the drawbacks of cryptocurrencies. It doesn't pay a yield. Yeah, I'm showing a big yield. I have to look into that. I'm not sure what that is.
Yep.
It shouldn't.
Yeah, it
It
was a
shouldn't
surprise to
generate
me
it.
too. Yeah, it looks like it
Yeah.
generates a yield of about 50%, as a matter of fact. So that's why it got my attention recently since this big run up. So definitely look forward to your write up on that. What about Ethereum, which has been along for the ride lately too, moving higher since last Tuesday's election? We see Ethereum right now hovering close to 3,200. Looks like the rise in Bitcoin, of course, also spurring a rally in the other crypto and meme coins that we've seen.
Yeah, when you check out Coinbase, it just looks like it's just green all over the place. I mean, Bitcoin, Tether, Solana, Dogecoin, XRP, they're all up. I think just people are really bullish on this idea that Trump is going to roll back any kind of regulation or barrier to the popularization of these coins. And there's probably some truth to it, because if you look at the S&P 500, the number 2 best performing sector is financials. It's up 6.6% just from the election. And a large part of that is the same thing, is just the hope that he will back off regulation and reduce the reserves requirement. Financials are actually the best performing sector since the election, second best after consumer discretionary. And the only reason consumer discretionary is doing better since the election is because of one stock, Tesla, and Elon Musk, who made a very good bet on Trump on this.
That's amazing. Tesla's been moving up, and then of course the Magnificent One, which you write out a lot about. Of course, Nvidia, which has been hitting record highs too lately. What about the Nvidia and the entire Mag 7 group, which includes Tesla?
Yeah, it's just been really kind of ironic, because I think one of the things that voters were kind of sick of was kind of the concentration of wealth in the companies on the West Coast. And ironically, since the election, those 7 companies have been the biggest beneficiaries on a net value basis by far. They're not the biggest percentage gainers, but they're the biggest value gainers. In fact, NVIDIA is back over to be the number 1 most valuable company in the world. There's now 8 companies worth $1 trillion. It's just amazing to see the big just keep getting bigger. With that said, small caps are actually having a big run as well. They're the 3rd best performing major sector group in the S&P 500 after the election. So small is getting a lift as well.
And we see Meta closing a bit lower today, down nearly $5 to $580. Meta changed their name from Facebook, and trying to capitalize on that craze we saw for a while there of the metaverse, where people were buying real estate and all sorts of things in an imaginary metaverse, an imaginary universe. And we haven't heard too much about that lately. And then we also heard the crypto component to that as well. What's happening with the metaverse and what's happening with Meta? Certainly the stock has been performing pretty well.
It's pretty amazing. So we're willing to buy fake money, cryptocurrency, but we're not willing to go into the fake world, it seems. Meta's been trying to get people to put these goggles on for years. They've driven the price down to $350, but it just isn't working. In fact, I think it was reports in the Wall Street Journal, our sister publication, that Apple is going to back away from their virtual reality helmet or whatever it is. So people they're just not ready to strap on these things on their faces, and they're not ready for face computers yet. Stock has been kind of a laggard. There's some belief, and I don't know how much there is to it, that if you remember, Elon Musk and Zuckerberg were going to kind of hating on each other, going to have a cage match. Well, now that Elon Musk is in the White House, it looks like Zuckerberg's got one more thing to deal with.
All right, and Apple certainly has been along for the ride lately, closing up nearly $1 today to $225 and change. What about Apple here and its entree into AI and other things that previously it was not big in?
Apple's got this product, the iPhone and the iPad. There's such huge hits. Its problem is it can't come up with anything that's as huge as these 2 products. Like, they've tried cars and they backed away from that. They tried face computers and virtual reality helmets, and that didn't work either. But you know what? I think for investors, that's okay. When you make an iPhone and there's virtually no competition and there's huge barriers to entry, and now the new Trump administration is going to not ban, but put huge tariffs on the imported Chinese goods, which would include low-cost tablets. That's just giving Apple like the kind of the permission to go ahead and raise prices, and their tablets are already double the price of the imports. So it's hard to mess with perfection. I mean, this stock is just cooking. They're number 2 most valuable company in America, and it's up a little bit since the election, but for the year, it's up 17%, which is amazing given its size.
All right, the Magnificent One, NVIDIA, pulling back a couple of dollars today to 146.27. Have you written up NVIDIA lately, and what are your thoughts on this big name in the AI world?
Yeah, people can't get enough about that one. It's the number 1 most valuable company in the world. They passed up Apple. They passed up Microsoft. It's just incredible. The demand is off the charts. We're looking at triple-digit earnings growth expectations for this company going out for a couple of years. The stock, it did benefit from the election as well, as up 4.5%, as there's this hope that there'll be less Chinese competition for the company. But to be honest with you, they don't really have much Chinese competition to begin with. And that's very apparent in the stock, which is up 195% this year. So this is just a superstar, and it just got added to the Dow, which just makes it even more entrenched.
All right, and Tesla stock up again today of $1.75 to $3.30 and change, contributing to Elon Musk's meteoric wealth rise since the election over the past week. What about Tesla here now at $3.30 and change?
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier, the stock is up huge since the election. It's up 31%, which is just astounding. I mean, so that pushed the value of the company back up over $1 trillion. I always can tell, though, when things are getting kind of toppy, because this is very anecdotal, but I start getting texts from friends and family. Should I sell my Tesla? Should I sell my Tesla? So I think people are getting nervous about it. But to be honest with you, I'm not really sure why. Elon Musk is now like buddy-buddy with the President of the United States of America, who loves tariffs. And really the only competition Tesla has is BYD out of China. And if China and BYD is facing 50%, 60% tariffs, that's basically a ban. They're not even going to try. So that just gives Tesla a kind of free road to just kind of do whatever they want for a little while.
All right, and gold was on a tear for a while, hitting record highs, but it's pulled back now. You mentioned gold earlier. It's down to $10 today at $2,576. Silver, which has also seen quite a big year so far, has been moving higher and still above $30 an ounce, but pulling back slightly today to $30.36. What about gold and silver at this point?
Yeah, so gold's in kind of no man's land at this point. So on one hand, investors want yield because, you can get almost 5% from a savings account. So if you're going to own a stock, you need to get a pretty good yield, and gold's not going to do that. It yields zero. At the same token, you want to have a store of value, and very, very slowly and gradually, the Bitcoin ETFs and the Bitcoin phenomena is kind of taking its place there. So gold and also silver, to a lesser degree, kind of find themselves in the middle ground. And I know gold bugs will disagree, and I know gold has been basically currency for centuries, and I appreciate that. But just right now, anyway, at least after the election, even this year, it's up. This year is up 24%, which is pretty awesome. It's better than the S&P 500, but it's running into some headwinds since the election because of Bitcoin and Trump.
That is the election of President Trump. So the Trump trade is on, and anything else that's considered a Trump trade these days that's been getting your attention and your write-ups there at Investors Business Daily?
I've been looking a lot at small caps. They really took off. I think people have been waiting for small caps to do better. Small caps are really well positioned in a couple of ways. First of all, they get most of their business domestically. So if there are tariffs against, Chinese imports or foreign imports, that will benefit these companies that are mostly centered in the United States. That's one. And two, lower taxes tend to really benefit the bigger companies. They have the games they can play to kind of shuffle taxes around, but smaller companies can't do that as well. so they could benefit from a lower tax corporate structure. So this might finally be the time. But again, I've said this many times before, but this may finally be the time for smaller companies to start doing a little bit better.
All right. I noticed in one of your most recent articles, you noted 13 stocks that have rallied since President Trump's re-election, contributing to a tremendous, eye-popping amount of wealth. Those names include Tesla, Alphabet, NVIDIA, Amazon, Microsoft, United Health Group in the healthcare sector, Berkshire Hathaway also moving up, Oracle looks like, and among the banking names, Bank of America, Visa, and let's see here, and J.P. Morgan Chase, the biggest of all of the banks, right? What are your market monitors saying about where this thing goes from here?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are actually watching Warren Buffett. He's sitting on $325 billion in cash. He's never had that much money, that much cash in his life. And he doesn't like sitting around with money idle like that. He likes putting capital to work. So to see his company become the eighth company worth $1 trillion, but at the same time playing it very conservatively, basically sitting on $325 billion in cash, that's getting a lot of people's attention. And a lot of people are kind of waiting to see what he does if he finally does something with all that money.
Does he still think Bitcoin is rat poison?
Well, his buddy did, Charlie, who's no longer with us, unfortunately. But I don't think Buffett is anti-Bitcoin. But I think after seeing this run in this new administration, I think he may have to change his course. But with that said, he owns all the finance. He owns many of the major financials anyway, so he's benefiting already anyway.
Right, and famously, he has said that he doesn't invest in things that he does not understand. So I guess he's still trying to figure out cryptos and Bitcoin, along with many other folks out there.
With that said, he's also said he hated airlines and he was buying airlines, and he said he hated technology and he bought Apple. He's been selling it recently, but he bought a lot of it. So he gets on board. I'm not saying he's going to buy Bitcoin. I would be surprised if he did, but I wouldn't be totally surprised to see him kind of researching it and trying to get his hands around it.
Great, Matt. Well, thanks very much for taking the call today as the rally rolls on here. Matt KRANTZ with Investors Business Daily, the authoritative financial newspaper and online presence. Matt KRANTZ, personal finance and managing editor at IBD, watcher of financial markets and author of Investing Online and Fundamental Analysis for Dummies. Matt, it's always great to speak with you. Thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
And right out to the freeways now we go on 790 KABC. Sure, Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Mixed finish for the markets today. The Dow pulling back for a while, but closed higher, up 47 points at make that 43,958. The S&P 500 up just 1 point at 5,985. The Nasdaq closed lower by 50 points at 19,231. Volatility index, the VIX index, pulling back by 5% today. Gold down nearly $9, back to $2,577.80 an ounce. Crude oil futures bouncing around, down 28 cents at the close today in New York at $68.15 a barrel. Of course, cryptos are very much in the spotlight, with Bitcoin roaring to record highs above 93,000 today. Right now up about 400 at 90,235. Ethereum up 39 at 3,194. And Doge, you've been hearing that word lately as President Trump has named Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy as heads of the new Department of Government Efficiency. Doge is the acronym for that one. And Doge is at 40 cents. That one has seen quite a rise this year, folks, since the beginning of the year. Since the start of 2024, Doge is up 330%. Taking a look at the Magnificent One, let's bring up NVIDIA here. NVIDIA moving higher today. The Magnificent One was higher, but now it's down $2.02 at the close at $146.27. Apple shares, let's bring that one up here. Apple moved higher by 89 cents at $225 and change. And Meta, which has had quite a roll recently, pulling back nearly $5 today at $580 a share. And now the latest news for you here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Commercial real estate still a sore point in downtown Los Angeles and other places around the country coming off the pandemic. Still a lot of see-through buildings out there as the slow return to the office continues. Some areas, though, like Century City, though, still doing quite well. Let's talk about how commercial real estate might look under President Trump coming back into office. Jerry Sullivan's with us live now, national managing editor for The Real Deal, who oversees coverage here in Southern California, the authoritative Real Deal website for commercial real estate. Jerry, thank you very much for taking the call here. A lot to talk about, given what's happened here in the last week. Give us your view of things here at the moment.
Well, as you mentioned, Frank, and by the way, it's good to be on with you. As always. And as you mentioned, office market is very rough in LA. It continues. There are a few bright spots. I don't see anything that's going to happen at a federal level that would, reverse that locally. I think, the industry will probably benefit from a number of moves that President-elect Trump will make. And, look at some of the key players around him right now. Howard Lutnick, who's essentially, headhunter in chief right now, running the transition. Also owns Newmark, has Cantor Fitzgerald and Newmark, the big brokerage. I think Steve Witkoff was just named to a prominent post, another real estate person. So I think there will be an obvious sensibility from a commercial real estate perspective in a second Trump administration. The specifics of how much that can hit a local market, that's a little different, and we'll have to see.
Well, certainly no president, I believe, in history has had this kind of commercial real estate experience, right? Having built Trump Tower and the other properties in New York, and he still has a property here, by the way, in Southern California, the Trump National Golf Course in the South Bay, and other properties elsewhere, including golf courses around the world. So certainly he must be very familiar with this subject and may have an influence, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at his first term, I think you saw opportunity zones were a big federal program that did hit real estate. So I imagine that will continue, or perhaps some sort of new twist on that. There's talk that one of the things that he did in his first term was to do the cap on the state and local tax deductions. There's talk about now of that coming off, which would be seen as a positive for the industry. So I think the tax policy, which the tax cuts that he put in place, are up to either expire or be renewed. So I think you could probably count on them being renewed, maybe adjusted somewhat. So yeah, and the other question, I think, especially with his now giving Elon Musk a role on efficiency of the federal government and everything else, from what I'm hearing is take a look at how much space the General Services Administration of the federal government, oversees and leases on behalf of various agencies. And are we going to see some sort of change there, or might, and this might be a significant factor, Frank, might a Trump administration get very serious about back to work for federal employees? And I think that would cheer a lot of commercial property owners in a lot of city centers. If all federal employees were coming back to work 5 days a week, I think, that could make a significant difference.
Very interesting. And also the use of federal property to house the homeless, and especially for homeless veterans. There seems to be a buzz about that as well. Closer to home, and I know you follow this very closely, this ULA tax that impacted so-called mansion tax, also mostly impacted commercial real estate. And I see you have a new write-up about this here. The LA so-called mansion tax, meant to take from the rich to pay for housing for the poor, has taken its toll on nonprofit home builders now, with millions in unexpected fees, curbing the development of affordable housing here in the Los Angeles area. What is the latest on that one?
Well, you can. I would almost call this, a case of unintended consequences. They passed this mansion tax trying to raise money to address housing issues, essentially, and of course, it really puts a crimp in the market. They're not taking in anywhere near the amount of money they thought and it's not so much unintended consequences, I think, as, politicians who view the world in a very static way, putting a tax into a dynamic market. And, and the market moved the other way on them. Should have been able to see that. They didn't see it. And so now we're dealing with the result of it. So it's just that tax is just a mess. And it has led lenders to really take a hard look at whether they want to put any money behind multifamily apartment projects in LA. It is going to eventually crimp the supply line. We probably haven't seen that. That takes 18 months or 2 years to really show up. But, there's not been a lot of development going on because of this. And now, with this latest, I can just see this as kind of a setup for now, okay, let's give the nonprofits a tax exemption or something along those lines. So then you start twisting the tax law to serve special interests, and it all just, it's just a mess.
Yeah, certainly put a big chill on commercial real estate here. And as a matter of fact, LA commercial real estate investment sales, I don't know if you saw the latest report recently, reached new lows, as a matter of fact. Have things hit bottom, you think, or are we about to go lower or turn around here?
Well, I would say that there's a bottom, and let's just talk about downtown, because I think of all the office centers, if you think Century City and Glendale and the various Torrance, the various office centers of various sizes throughout Los Angeles County, I think the roughest right now is downtown LA. And, I think prices are bumping along between $100 and $200 a square foot, which is a fraction of what they were pre-pandemic. And that would seem to be, I think, a bottom that will hold for high quality buildings. I just think there's going to have to be some teardowns. There's going to be some buildings that don't make sense for a conversion. Unless the basis is zero, I just don't think it's going to work out for a lot of buildings. There's just downtown LA right now has more built environment than it's ever going to need from an office standpoint. And it's probably just time to have that reckoning.
Interesting. We haven't heard the word pivoting in a while since the pandemic. Everybody was pivoting back in those days, but I see an interesting write-up you have here in The Real Deal about Mauricio Umansky, who's a giant on the real estate scene here, the CEO of the agency. You see those agency real estate signs in front of expensive homes throughout the area. Mauricio Umansky diversifying his revenue streams to deal with the downturn that he's apparently seeing, including setting up an art consultancy, ed tech, and other new markets. That's very interesting. Tell us what's happening there.
Well, I think one of the things that you ought to also consider with Mauricio in particular is the reality TV publicity that he can crank up. And so he's a television personality, obviously a very high level real estate executive. And so you start to do these brand extensions, right? And that platform of reality TV, and then, that blends in with social media, everything else. I think as you look, and obviously the market's, less than ideal in LA. So you start looking for other ways to make money and other things you can do. And, you do have a base in terms of your brand, and you build on it. And so I think that's what's going on there. And, we'll see how it turns out.
Terrific, Jerry. Well, thank you very much for that comprehensive update, and look forward to your upcoming conferences here in the Los Angeles area. And we'll keep an open line to you as we follow all things real estate, including commercial real estate here in the Los Angeles area. That is Jerry Sullivan, National Managing Editor for The Real Deal, the authoritative commercial real estate site at therealdeal.com, and also overseeing the coverage here in Southern California of commercial real estate. Jerry, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank, and we'll talk again soon.
Look forward to it. Thank you very much, Jerry. And right out to the freeways we go now on 790 KABC. Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Now, with the U.S. debt at more than $35 trillion and climbing, Not to mention the Biden administration getting us involved in costly wars, developing the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, and inflation still spiraling. It's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets, like your cash savings and retirement accounts, with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement in the market and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and, yes, silver. Give Joe Morgan a call now at 1-800-753-8534. Mention Frank Mottek, and you can get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now, 1-800-753-8534, or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Money continues here in 790 KBC. Good afternoon. Nervous time in the Middle East, with Israel still under threat from Iran. In fact, was attacked by Hezbollah this past week, with the rockets landing into Israeli territory. President-elect Trump has selected, Marco Rubio, Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, to be the next U.S. Secretary of State, and former Alabama Governor Mike Huckabee will be the next U.S. ambassador to Israel, and Congressman Matt Gaetz will be serving as U.S. Attorney General in the new Trump administration. What does all this mean for Middle East policy? Joining us live now is Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, Museum of Tolerance in West Los Angeles. Rabbi Cooper, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks for having me. It's never boring out there.
Certainly, and very important things happening right now. Give us your reaction. First of all, it's been a while since we chatted behind live microphones. First of all, the re-election of President Trump and what that means to Israel and Middle East policy here.
Well, I think since the main focus of friend and foe alike in the Middle East right now is Iran and the Iranian regime, they tried to assassinate the president. They tried to assassinate his former Secretary of State and others. The fact that he was reelected and with such a powerful mandate actually is giving a lot of pause back in Tehran about utilizing their lackeys, Hezbollah and the Houthis and the others. I think if the U.S. actually shows a much more muscular approach, puts the sanctions back in, it could be that maybe the paradigms now will shift, and we can actually talk about serious negotiations in Lebanon and maybe finally the end of the conflict in Gaza. So all eyes are on the president-elect of the United States, and you see already certain moves being made by the Iranians. At the same time, other spokesmen are talking about, murdering every Jew on the planet, and they're still moving forward with their nuclear program. But we're going to be hearing, when it comes to, global issues, when he was president that first term, one of his greatest strengths was that no one could fully predict what exactly he would do. And he leveraged that against some pretty powerful bad actors. So I think the fact that you now have Marco Rubio, who's, besides, they're talking about the first Latino, all of that is great. He has been earned the respect of both sides of the aisle in the Senate. He knows how to get things done. He's an expert on China, on Iran. He comes, I think, really fully loaded to do an important job for foreign policy overseas. And he's also, unequivocally pro-Israel, as are of course, the Governor Huckabee, who's, is an evangelical Christian. I think he's been to Israel somewhere between 50 and 100 times. He will be certainly welcomed by the people of Israel, and he is, a bright person, very articulate, and I think he's the kind of ambassador who's likely to make less mistakes out there than many other first-time ambassadors. So overall, including the CIA and the intelligence picks, the president is signaling everyone around the world that he's coming back, and they can expect that whether it's going to be with Ukraine or the NATO or even within our own hemisphere, what's going on with the Iranians in South America, we can expect some significant changes. And exuding the strength, being more muscular, actually will tamp down the possibility of wider regional wars or something even worse, God forbid. So overall, very positive. As far as Gates is concerned, I'm not sure why he was picked. He has certainly a checkered history when it comes, for example, he voted against the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act and other statements and moves that he made that are were disconcerting to the Jewish community then and remain so. But to the core of a president's foreign policy and the concerns over the fact that Israel is still fighting a seven-front war and the open-ended question about the nuclear ambitions of the Iranian regime, this election is certainly a positive step insofar as having the Iranians think 4, 5, 10 times before they take their next action.
On the air live with Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action of the Simon Wiesenthal Center in West Los Angeles, and Elise Stefanik, who spoke out against anti-Semitism on American college campuses when she had the college presidents there at that famous hearing where she laid bare their views. What's your reaction to her becoming the UN representative, the U.S. representative at the United Nations?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, she is a Harvard graduate herself. Woman is brilliant. I would hate to get into an argument with her. She's very focused. And I think the United Nations is getting exactly what it deserves. An American who's going to stand up and speak out against some of the nonsensical things going on and some of the worst things going on. I have an op-ed scheduled tomorrow in the Washington Times where I make mention of the fact that when he was president the first term, President Trump defunded UNRWA. That's the United Nations entity that it turns out a large number of Hamas members were involved with. Some of them actually were holding hostages, etc. And in this piece, we actually call the president to go much further this time and to lead the 60 donor nations in ending UNRWA and let the Palestinians themselves stand on their own 2 feet, control their own education, social concerns, and their medical. And they can take international aid by all means. But the days of staying and pursuing refugee status in perpetuity 4 or 5 generations later has to end. And I hope to meet with her in the near future and hope the United States will lead the way to help the Palestinian people, but help them to help themselves. No more of this refugee status 75 plus years later when there are 43 million other refugees around the world right now who desperately need the help. And the Palestinians have shown throughout the world they're perfectly capable of being successful in education, in business, in economics, and they can do so as well in Gaza and elsewhere in the Middle East if the United Nations unshackles them and let them develop their own destiny.
Rabbi, thank you very much for taking the call. As always, wish we had more time, but we'll keep an open line to you. In the meantime, Israel remains under attack by Hezbollah rockets, as the president of Israel mentioned at the White House yesterday. Look forward to speaking with you again on all these matters. Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, Museum of Tolerance, West Los Angeles, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Former Navy SEAL Sean Ryan shares real stories from real people from all walks of life on The Sean Ryan Show. Former U.S. Navy Admiral Tim Gallaudet.
How did you get involved in this whole UFO thing?
One day, I get this email on the Navy's secret network. If any of you know what these are, tell me ASAP. F-18 pilots captured video of this UAP zorching over the water, just a little round sphere. And so I knew right there, that was something not ours.
The Sean Ryan Show on YouTube or wherever you listen.